Hello and welcome. My name is Karen Brady and I am a contributing educational consultant to Patton's multi-tiered system of support MTSS initiative. Today we will be learning about response to intervention, RTI methodologies, specifically how to customize early reading goals for students through survey level assessment and use of growth, or what we call rate of improvement ROI data. The mission of the Pennsylvania Training and Technical Assistance Network, Patton, is to support the efforts and initiatives of the Bureau of Special Education and to build the capacity of local educational agencies to serve students who receive special education services. Our goal for each child is to ensure individualized educational program IEP teams begin with the general education setting with the use of supplementary aids and services before considering a more restrictive environment. Pennsylvania's multi-tiered system of support is a standards-aligned, comprehensive school improvement framework for enhancing both academic and behavioral health outcomes for all students. In Pennsylvania, response to intervention RTI refers to the methodology that is used to determine how slow is slow and how low is low as an alternative to ability achievement discrepancy within the specific learning disability SLD determination process. Pennsylvania's MTSS model represents an integrated system, meaning that cross-disciplinary teams use a problem-solving process to facilitate shared ownership for achieving academic and behavioral goals, using a continuum of evidence-based practices and reliable and valid data sources. The academic side of MTSS, standards-aligned high-quality core literacy, mathematics, and STEM instruction, is delivered within the context of culturally responsive practices, positive behavioral supports, and family engagement. There are key components that form the foundation of PA's MTSS framework. If a well-articulated, well-designed tiered system is in place, you should realize efficient, effective, and sustainable outcomes. Today, we will be discussing student response to intervention within the context of a multi-tiered system of support. Response to intervention methodologies rely heavily upon progress monitoring data and growth calculation. For students who are at risk, we often need to rely upon survey-level assessment to help us set high, albeit realistic goals. There are planning tools that can assist us with this process. Since we will be using planning tool later, you may want to have your own copy available to reference via the link located in the description of the YouTube video. Let's get started. Before we talk about assessing response to intervention, we want to make sure that each school has established a problem-solving team. Problem-solving teams are comprised of practitioners and family members who together possess a highly sophisticated, specialized skill set. The problem-solving team will assume responsibility for many of the things we will be talking about today, including individualized goal setting and ROI calculation. So if you haven't formed a problem-solving team in your school, it will be necessary to do so. The most critical reason we monitor progress within a response to intervention model is to inform instructional intensity. According to this quote by Fuchs and colleagues, curriculum-based measurement is a critical source of data and if used appropriately can have a powerful impact on instruction. We use curriculum-based measurement, CBM, to monitor student response to instruction and intervention because CBM is reliable and valid. It has been around for 30 years. CBM indicators are standardized and relatively brief, making them easy to administer and interpret. CBM reading indicators are sensitive to incremental growth in the areas of phonemic awareness, alphabetic principles skill development, and accuracy and automaticity within connected text, meaning they tell us who is making typical growth in these areas and who is not. CBM indicators are also linked to the processing systems in our reading brains. CBM can help practitioners identify where there is a breakdown and prevent students from experiencing early reading failure by targeting specific deficiencies. In a response to intervention model, we calculate rate of improvement, ROI, using CBM to tell us whether students are making typical, atypical, or ambitious growth. When we look at ROI, we are looking at growth through slope, that is, how slow or fast is a given student responding to our reading instruction and intervention. Graphing using CBM provides the student, families, and practitioners with a concrete picture of a student's performance over time. As indicated, we are especially interested in assessing how quickly a given student is closing his or her gap in reading. One way we can assess this is to compare the student's current performance in reading to the expected benchmark for that time of the year in their grade level. It is important to remember that each benchmark represents the minimum standard of proficiency. Most benchmarks equate to roughly the lower end of the average range, that is, the 35th to 40th percentile of reading achievement. In essence, we want the lowest performing student in a grade level to reach this minimum threshold of proficiency. It's also important to look at rate of progress through analysis of the student's performance on weekly progress monitoring probes. Are they moving toward the benchmark number? How quickly? Do we need to establish an interim goal? Is the benchmark number too high, even if they are moving at light speed? In a response to intervention model, this is called the problem-solving process. What is the problem? How do we know? What are we going to do? Is it working? We talked about using CBM to assess how slow is slow, or the student's rate of progress. But what about the student's level? How low is low? For example, the student's performance on fall, winter, and spring benchmark assessments can also tell us how far below grade level the student is performing. Sometimes the student may be performing 1 year below grade level. In other cases, they may be performing 2 or more years below grade level. A good example of this is when a second grader is given second grade oral reading fluency passages and is only reading at a pre-primer level. These are several ways to calculate rate of improvement. We will review these methods and primarily emphasize the use of ordinary least squares because the OLS method is the most defensible way to determine the student's actual, or what we call attained, rate of improvement, slope, in a response to intervention model. Briefly, we often use the two-point method to calculate typical and targeted rate of improvement. If you are using the modified two-point method, you are using it because it considers the median of the first 3 data points and the median of the last 3 data points, rather than a single beginning and single ending point. In contrast, the OLS method is used to calculate the student's attained or actual rate of improvement because this approach calculates slope using all of the progress monitoring data points that were collected. The student's attained or actual ROI is not something we typically calculate by hand. We can use a system like ChartDog that is free through Intervention Central to help us calculate ROI using the OLS method. ChartDog helps practitioners assess how low is low and how slow is slow with relative ease and accuracy. Here are links to recordings that we have created to help practitioners use ChartDog and calculate rate of improvement. We are now going to transition into customized goal setting. Before we talk about individualizing a student's goal through survey-level assessment, let's quickly review which progress monitoring probes we use for students who are just beginning to perform below benchmark status. When students perform slightly below benchmark, we continue to use grade-level probes to monitor the response to intervention on a bi-monthly basis. Instructionally, our goal is to close their existing gap so that these students meet or exceed the next benchmark before or during the next scheduled assessment window. We typically develop more individualized goals when students begin to perform well below benchmark or roughly the below average range of achievement. If your school has too many students who are falling in the below average range of achievement, you may have to establish a more stringent criterion, such as the significantly below average range of achievement. Each school or team has to establish their own decision-making criteria based upon the needs of their students, So please know that this is a general recommendation for guiding decisions regarding when to customize goals for students. The reason we conduct survey level assessment is to determine the level at which the student is successful, so that when we progress monitor, we are not monitoring at a level that is too high for the student. If we monitor using probes that are too difficult, such as grade level progress monitoring probes, then we will not see incremental growth, and therefore we will not be able to determine response to intervention. For students who are performing well below benchmark, we want to find the progress monitoring material in which the student can perform at least the 25th percentile of reading achievement. How do we determine the student's instructional level? Here is an example of conducting survey level assessment for a third grade student using RCBM or oral reading fluency probes. We would administer 3 third grade probes, 3 second grade probes, and 3 first grade probes until we find the level at which the student is performing at least the 25th percentile of achievement. You can see that on the third grade level probes, the student's median score for words read correct per minute was 41 with 11 errors. This is way too difficult. On second grade oral reading fluency probes, the student's median score for the words read correct per minute was 50 with 6 errors. On first grade ORF probes, the student's median score was 50 with 1 error. This is way too easy. If we convert the student's performance to a percentile equivalent, and remember, we are looking for the level at which the student can perform at least the 25th percentile, you can see that we would progress monitor using second grade reading probes. Again, if we use third grade probes, we would not see growth, and if we use first grade probes, we would not see growth. When we use survey level assessment, we are applying the Goldilocks principle. Which level is too hard, which level is too easy, and which is just right. Your turn. Analyze the results of this survey level assessment that was conducted with a second grade student. Which materials would you use to assess this student's response to intervention on a weekly basis? This student's performance fell well below benchmark or within the significantly below average range on second grade assessment measures, and fell within the average range on first grade oral reading fluency and nonsense word fluency measures. This student reached the goal on the phoneme segmentation fluency measure. Therefore, we would monitor this student's response to intervention using first grade ORF and NWF measures. Again, monitoring using these probes will help us to assess the student's response to intervention on a weekly basis as a function of changes we make to our instructional intensity. Setting goals that are high, albeit realistic, is inherent within the problem-solving process. Teams must consider a number of factors. In a tiered system of support, we spend the most time focused on variables that are within our control, including instruction, curriculum, and the environment. That being said, teams must consider whether a student's targeted rate of improvement, ROI, is reasonable, and sometimes this can feel more subjective or clinical in nature because context matters, and closing the gap takes time, intensity, and experimentation. Now is a good time to reference the flowchart tool that I mentioned earlier. This flowchart was developed by the late Dr. Edward Shapiro and was taken from Best Practices in School Psychology. This tool will help you do everything we just covered, including what I would like to focus on now, which is the right side, goal setting. When we determine that a student is not performing at grade level, we want to set a realistic but ambitious goal. We might consider setting a goal that is associated with the 50th percentile of achievement or solid average range. After we set this recommended goal, we are using the appropriate progress monitoring measures based upon our survey level assessment to track the student's movement toward this desired level of proficiency. This is an example of survey level assessment that was conducted with a third grader. On third grade level oral reading fluency probes, the student's fluency fell well below benchmark or significantly below grade level. Therefore, we would monitor this student's response to intervention using second grade level probes because the student's performance of 50 correct words per minute is equivalent to the 37th percentile of achievement, and is not too easy or too hard for the student. Therefore, we should be able to see growth using second grade level oral reading fluency probes. Here are some steps to help with goal setting using the flow chart as a guide. First, using Ames-Webb norms and the results from the survey level assessment, we would find the typical ROI for a second grade student from fall to spring on oral reading fluency. It is 1.22 correct words per minute per week. Second, we would determine the targeted rate of improvement for this student, which is 3.11 correct words per minute per week. This student needs to read almost 3 times more than what is typical per minute per week in a second grade level passage. Remember, we determined the targeted ROI using the 2-point method as shown on the slide and set the goal for 18 instructional weeks so that we keep the goal realistic but high in terms of the timeline for which we want to accomplish it. Third, in order to help the student realize ambitious growth, we will need to really intensify our instruction and intervention. The problem-solving team will need to identify which evidence-based practices we will use to help meet the student's needs. Let's take a look at this example of a written interim customized goal for Susie, our third grader who is being progress monitored using second grade level Ames-Webb fluency probes. We hope Susie reaches her goal soon so that we can monitor her response to intervention using grade level probes. We will know over time as a function of ROI calculation. We will see a reliable trend after we have 5 to 7 data points. So how did Susie do? This is what her data looks like using the Ames-Webb charting system. As you can see, Susie met her goal on second grade level passages. Looking at Susie's performance over this 18-week intervention period, she read 106 correct words per minute with 3 errors. Susie's targeted rate of improvement was 3.11 correct words per minute per week. Her actual or attained rate of improvement is 3.52 words read correct per minute per week. Wow! Susie made ambitious growth in response to robust instruction and intervention. Let's see what the flow chart suggests we do next, because Susie's performance on second grade reading probes is equivalent to the 65th percentile of reading achievement, so these are too easy for her now. Let's look at the gray box at the top and answer the question, does the student achieve a fluency rate equal to or greater than the 50th percentile for that instructional level? If the answer is no, we would stay on the right side of the flow chart and continue monitoring as per the student's current instructional level. In this case, the answer is yes. So we are going to stay on the left side of the flow chart and conduct further survey level assessment to determine where to monitor Susie. The question is Susie performing at least the 25th percentile on third grade passages? If this is the case, then we are going to monitor her on third grade level passages rather than continue to monitor her using second grade level passages. To bring the problem-solving process back full circle, every team should be evaluating response to intervention or growth as a function of sound implementation of the considerations listed here. What does the student need? How will we coordinate a daily instructional and intervention diet to meet his or her needs? Which evidence-based reading practices will we employ and how are they matched to student need? Is there room to make our reading instruction and intervention more explicit and systematic? Was the student able to respond often and receive immediate feedback given their group size? Was instruction delivered with fidelity? There are additional resources to help you with progress monitoring and customized goal setting to include the National Center for Intensive Intervention at www.intensiveintervention.org. You will find a judicious review of progress monitoring measures and information related to decision-making and instructional intensification. There are also articles and webinars related to the use of curriculum-based measurement within a tiered system of support. We also encourage you to explore the MTSS initiative page and resources, including our live binders for reading, writing, mathematics, word generation, and MTSS Bootcamp. To access the live binders on the MTSS initiative page, click Access Information on the right-hand side, where you see our list of live binders in orange. Click on the binder that interests you and just enter the corresponding access key. Setting customized goals and progress monitoring is a technical skill that becomes easier as your problem-solving team gains more experience with this process. I want to thank you for taking the time to watch this quick pick.